Now I want to tell you about heat and fire. And we want to define what that is. Heat is when you put a little bit of a crunch on a note. Instead of, and I reck of you, it's got that sound to it. Fire is when there's no note. It's almost a spoken tone, but it has a, and the wreck of you.
When I first started screaming, I didn't even think you could get taught that.
You can still maintain that sort of force, but do it in a way that it's not just wreaking havoc on your throat.
She definitely taught me how to be a little bit more forceful without having to work harder to be forceful.
For a long time, I would sing in voices like this, and it would really hurt by the end of the day, or even hurt as I was doing it. And one thing that I know and I learned from this was that if it hurts, you're doing it wrong. And you can probably get the same sound another way without it hurting.
You mustn't think of this as singing. This is yelling, but it's yelling onto pitch. The rainbow exercise goes like this. You take your hand and you make 4 arcs. The first one is down here, and you take the syllable whoa, like whoa, horsey, and you move it with your hand. So it goes like this. Whoa! And then you make a higher one. Whoa! And then you make a higher one. Whoa! And then you make a high one, but instead of going all the way down, you stop in mid-heaven. Whoa! That's a pitch. Now, if I were to sing that, whoa, oh, oh, right? I do all kinds of weird things to sing. But if I pitch the yell, whoa, and I put a little heat on it, which I'll get to in a second, that's how I'm going to get that sound. Not by singing it, but by yelling it onto the pitch. Now, let's talk about the heat. First thing I want you to do is to pretend like you're a kitty cat. Now, take a look at my larynx. See how my little, if I had an Adam's apple, it would be right here. I don't because I'm a girl. But watch how it jumps up when I go, see how it lifts up? Now, the way I'm going to hurt myself is to do that without the dump or the baby. Do this for me. Ow! Ow! Right? That didn't hurt me, by the way, because I used so much baby and so much dump. And you could get away with anything as long as you use that. But if I do that with the kitty cat, right, and then add a note to that,
No!
that's how you get the heat.
She understands the difference between singing and screaming, and you don't find a lot of people that understand the difference, the different parts of your vocal cords that you use, your false cords for screaming and your true cords for regular singing.
You're using like a different part of the vocal cord
Right.
to do that. You're actually using something called the false chord. When I go, that's not the same thing as that goes, hee, woo, hee, right? It's a whole different thing. So I'm actually like pushing together a different part of my vocal cord.
Heat is a great word to describe grit or harmonics that run through a voice.
She kind of taught me how to do different things to it, improve the scream almost, but not change what I had, Just I knew I could scream, but then she taught me how to put heat on it, coming from this part.
I like there to be harmonics when I sing. You have a bit of heat in the voice. You can get a lot of heat.
Immediately I could scream for an hour-long set and talk normal afterwards. Whereas before, I was doing an hour set, and I would be doing all the screaming, and I would get off stage and sound like blah, blah, blah.
I have some suggestions about learning fire. First of all, I don't want you to practice this more than 5 minutes at a time, because you're probably going to do it wrong to learn how to do it right. And you could kind of slice yourself up doing it too much. The larynx is your house. I don't want you to scrape in your house. I do not want you to get any sound by going like that. But rather, you do this Marge Simpson thing, which is kind of in the yard up here, oh, Bart, ah! You can make that noise without hurting yourself because you have to actually use the dump or the baby. Ow, ow, ah! Doesn't hurt a bit. But if you make that feel as aggressive as it sounds, you are going to get hurt.
That I can do all day long. Or like, that I can do fairly well. That really doesn't give me any problem.
I want you to bark like a dog. Do this. Woof, woof, woof. You feel how your dump is actually like pumping that? Woof, woof, woof.
It's difficult to be one-dimensional these days. You need to go ahead and have a range, or else people are just going to be like, oh, it's another screamer. Or if they're into metal, it's like, well, yeah, he sings, but it's, that's about it. It's just singing,
One of the major factors of me deciding to work with Melissa is that I knew I didn't have to explain from scratch what I was talking about. This style of extreme metal has a pretty interesting vocal technique. It's not exactly classically inclined in most ways. Most kids are just screaming their lungs out and their heart out. So, and that's tough if you go in and you're like play stuff and you're like, some reason I'm losing my voice every now and then on tour, and you play him your CD and you're screaming. He's like, well, yeah, because you're screaming. She totally knows what's up, so she's already like, oh, cool, And she'd worked with a lot of bands that I had known from the past. That she'd worked with kids from the hardcore scene and from the metal scene. So just knowing that you could already begin, with that understanding was a huge comfort factor, and also helped, just get right into it.
People want to know, hey, how do you scream like that? People want to know, hey, what do I do? How do I do this? And she really knows her stuff backwards and front, So it's really cool that someone's actually putting out a DVD that says, hey, this is the stuff that you're going to want to know if you're looking to be in a metal band.
You could scream, and then if you have to go from screaming to singing, you know that when you're screaming, you have to bring it down a little bit in order to go into the singing, which a lot of people don't recognize. I mean, there's these transitions that are just, screaming bloody murder into this singing that's like, well, it sounds good, but the transitions aren't smooth. And I really think that's what Melissa Cross definitely taught me, how to transition between yelling and screaming and singing the best, so I know where I have to be when, a phrase ends to go into the next part.
Being in a metal band the way I am, and you have this idea that because you're screaming or you're singing in a intense way, you have to be kind of really, just really tight, and you don't. You have to be relaxed. You have to come out there and let the voice flow out of you, as opposed to sitting there and be like, ugh.
That's a really popular way that people for this kind of music sing, is from their throat, and it sometimes sounds just like it hurts.
Just don't push. That's the whole thing. Kids ask me that all the time. How do you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, just don't push.
The exercise that I want you to practice is I want you to do your ABCs and do jumping jacks.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Have you guys had to do that? The jumping jacks?
No, I'm too fat.
I've had to do the ABCs screaming in my voice.
H-I-J-K-L-M-N-O-P-Q-R-S-T-U-V-W-X-Y-Z.
Excellent. That was great. The emotion goes in your heart, not in your body. So you need to be very calculated about not putting too much anger, aggression, or angst in your throat. You don't need it, and it's going to hurt you. Use the dump.
It feels way better, and at the end of the night, I'm exhausted from playing, but I don't feel like I got run over by a tractor, that stopped to wreck on my throat for a while.
Now I can just hold and scream my pitch on a dime without really trying to overexert myself and
not pushing.
Feel like shit after the show.
Every day I get off stage and I'm fine. Compared to a couple tours ago, I was getting off stage and I couldn't even talk. It felt like I was tearing stuff in my throat. I could feel the strain while I was doing it. Sometimes it would give me headaches too, because I was doing it completely wrong.
To sing more or less not in a particular key, which would be screaming, not necessarily high, not like a only, but all kinds of ranges of screaming, and that's an exciting thing, and I've seen it grow in popularity, and that's what's so good about this thing, is to talk about that kind of singing, to learn about that kind of singing, so you can find your voice within that range.
If you're a lead singer, you're like an athlete. I'm going to give you some tips. Number 1, don't push. If you are rehearsing in a small rehearsal space and you can't hear yourself, don't try to compete with the guitar player and the drums and the bass, because you're not going to win. It's just not going to be fun. So you have to talk to yourself and say, I will not push, I will not push. Even if you have bad monitors, you cannot push your voice above to be heard. You just have to trust that the audience is hearing it.
Live, it's so loud a lot of times that you're going to sing in a different way, especially if you can't hear yourself. And I think that it's very easy to lose your voice, but it's also very easy to do things that will help you avoid it.
A lot of singers try to compensate for that not being able to hear by just yelling louder, and that's when it goes awry.
If they're not going to turn down,
then we're not going to play a show.
well, no, that's kind of diva-y. That depends on you're just going to have to not push. You're not going to have a good time, and it's kind of a drag because it's not
You know
fun.
what I hate now too, which I didn't care about. I didn't really mind. I minded the whole DIY thing when it was in the editorial and stuff.
Yeah.
But this, even later on, I like playing real PAs, but it just sucks when you were trying to be so professional and then you play shitty clubs and the monitors suck.
Oh,
but you
yeah.
can't blame it on that. You have to be good no matter what the
No, but
scenario
it's
is.
not fun. No bad monitors. It's not fun. It's
Some of our
really
first
a
tours in
drag.
8th Street, no sound man, and it's just so hard to hear each other. There's so many melodies going on, you know.
Absolutely. And it's not fun. You just have to talk to yourself, I will not push.
Yeah.
I will not push. This is going to suck, but I will not push. Because if you push, it's out front, it sounds awful.
Learning to kind of lay back and not let your excitement get too much in the way of how you sound. And a lot of times if, I'll just do a quick little ear tap just so I can kind of hear it more in my head.
Listen to yourself and don't push too hard. Don't choke. Don't go out like a punk. Don't choke.
When I don't have monitors, you tend to scream a lot harder and probably put out more air than you really need because you're trying to hear yourself in your own ears.
If you can't hear yourself, you get to a point when you're yelling or when you're singing when you know that the sound that you're making is resonating off anything else. And you don't have to necessarily hear it in the monitors.
My position on stage, I'm behind all the amps, and I have a drum monitor coming at the left side of my head. And I have Tom's monitors in front of him coming at me. And it's really, really, really loud. I can barely hear my keyboards, let alone my voice. But I've just learned that I know what it sounds like, and I don't really have to hear it too much.
Just because you can't hear it right here, everyone else can hear it out there. Well, at least you hope.
When there's a bad monitor mix or a bad sound guy, you got to kind of take it on faith that you're probably doing what, if you just feel like, on your normal level, you probably are nailing it. Just kind of have a little faith and don't try and overcompensate for a shitty PA. You will just torture yourself.
That's how a lot of people lose their voices. But I think that, with Melissa, what she taught me was that when you sing where you're supposed to sing from, where you're supposed to scream from, you feel it, up here, which I had never done before. I always felt it down here, but I wasn't ever sure. So now, at least I know now, that if something isn't working, as long as I feel it where I'm supposed to feel it, I don't have to overcompensate anymore. Because I know that it's getting there. I might not personally be able to hear it.
If you've just played a set and you come off and there's another band playing or there's loud music over the PA, don't talk. And if you have to talk, put your finger over your ear so that you can hear yourself. Oftentimes, you'll be talking all night and you don't even know how loud you're talking because you're talking just normally and you know it, and then you're hoarse the next day, not because of the set that you sang, but because you were talking like that over the music.
It's when you're drunk and screaming all night and just yelling over the other bands playing and getting a little buck wild, that's when you blow your shit out.
If I don't get enough sleep, then that'll give me a problem. If I talk too much after shows, or if I'm yelling too much after shows, or if I'm out partying with my friends and stuff, then after shows, then I'll end up losing my voice.
If you lose your voice, don't whisper. That is the worst thing that you can do. You know what whispering is? You're slamming your vocal cords together to make sound. There couldn't be anything worse for swollen cords than slamming them together to make sound. So if you have to speak, speak up. Use the speech warm-up. Use the whole machine. And don't coddle your voice, and don't try to save it, and don't try to be careful with it, because actually what you're doing there is you're just like rubbing an emery board on your vocal cords. You need to use the whole machine. The best thing to do is to learn vocal rest.
You told us to be quiet was the best thing to do?
Be quiet.
We did it for 8 hours one time in Australia. I got a horse and me and brother didn't talk for 8 hour drive.
It worked,
and it
right?
worked great, yeah. So long as I didn't talk. I swear I was writing notes all the way there.
Yeah,
Crazy.
vocal rest rules.
Definitely, like, be gentle with your voice. If you're screaming and you've kind of had some singing experience and it starts to hurt, you gotta stop and like figure it out another way.
I do tell people, don't believe in all that, all like the lozenges and all that stuff. This stuff does not help. You just basically
warm your throat up.
Warm your throat up. The tea, all that shit doesn't work. She told me that.
If you are one of these people that is always you need to learn how to clear your throat in a way that's less aggressive, less violent, like this. Stop with that scraping thing. Toby, you should never clear your throat like that.
It's okay, no?
No, blow air through it. Do this. Yeah, like that. Don't crunch. Don't crunch. No crunching, right? Just right, like that. Because that's like screaming the wrong way when you do that. If there's some glump in there, it's not going to kill you. Unless it's a big thing, just let it fall off by itself.
There's been times where I've been sick and would have a hard time, but I find that a lot of times the losing of your voice is just stuff in your throat, and the way that I sing now, more or less it vibrates it loose, and when I'm singing, like, I'll just like spit it up and it's just like ready to roll.
Allergies can cause havoc with singers because you get this nasal drip. That stuff drips onto your vocal cords, and it makes you cough, and it makes you dehydrated, it makes you much weaker. So if you have allergies, see your doctor about it, or get something over the counter. And a word about reflux laryngitis. Reflux laryngitis is when your stomach acid splashes up onto your vocal cords when you lie down after you eat. It's kind of like what people with heartburn get, except oftentimes reflux laryngitis does not come with heartburn, so you really don't feel it. You just know it because there's a lump in your throat all the time in the morning, and you always feel like you have to clear your throat. This is something that a doctor can diagnose. It's very common. It's very treatable. But it's something that could make you hoarse, so you want to take a look at it.
We tour so frequently that maintenance of my throat is a pretty important thing, because I don't want to have shows where I have like halfway bring it and it could have been better, because I was either like not taking care of myself or whatever, not warming up.
You cannot blame bad singing on smoking.
Your voice is your instrument. Whether you want to smoke, drink, or do whatever you do, you still have to respect it regardless. You might lose your voice if you drink. You might not lose your voice if you drink. You might lose your voice if you smoke. You know what? It's the good with the bad. You got to take it and accept it and work with it, but you can't use it as a crutch. You know what I mean? So if you want to be straight edge and don't do shit and sing, then do your thing. If you want to fucking party up and sing, just know that, if you don't treat your body right, physical body, then it's going to show in your performance. So you just got to fucking do your thing, man.
She's also not going to think you're never going to party. So, come on. Me and Randy, the new Toxic Twins, so if we can keep our voice every night with our lifestyle, thanks to Melissa's handy warm up,